It was like the second beat of a play. The first beat was helping this girl calm down. The second beat was being at this agency, burnt out, but feeling like the light in my life was when I was having these coaching moments with clients. When I was in that agency towards the tail end, I looked around and I was like, I am burnt out and I am done working for other people. Fuck corporate. Fuck working for other people. I don't want it. That's not how I'm wired. It's never been how I've been wired. I grew up always having an entrepreneurial mindset. It's why I did really well in startup. It was emotional. It was hard. I cried so much during that period. I decided one day, I'm done. I put in my notice. I had no idea what was next. When I told David, my partner, I was afraid what he would say because I was making a lot of money and I didn't know how that would affect us. Our rent, we're in San Diego, things are expensive. And he was so supportive. And I also knew, like, he never got on me for feeling anxious or feeling really emotional. He was always there as a steady support system. And he also like gave me space to figure it out on my own too. He didn't try to solve all my problems or, you know, control me in any way. So having his support, having him as a sounding board, I also was working with a coach and she also encouraged me like, there is more to life. You do not have to suffer behind a desk. You do not have to suffer working someplace where you don't trust the people you're working for or trust that things are really in alignment with yourself. Besides what other people might say, it's all up to you. Welcome to Side Note, the podcast, where we empower ambitious women with new perspectives. I'm Samantha Fackler, your host. Join me for off-the-cuff conversations with the most authentic people I can find. Entrepreneurs, creatives, authors, visionaries. We welcome you as you are and hope you leave with what you need. This is Side Note, the podcast where big ideas become real. Welcome to today's episode. This one is how I got here, and that requires us to talk about what here is. It all started with a moment of drugs at a music festival. But today I go to far fewer music festivals and I really don't do drugs unless you count caffeine. Um, but this journey for me has been about finding my voice, about stepping into my most authentic self and taking some really scary leaps. There's quite a winding path that we'll go through together today, but I hope you leave with whatever you need. Maybe it's a nugget of inspiration. Maybe it's a little nudge to do something that you've been absolutely terrified to do. So, starting in 2017, I went to a music festival with some friends, and there were four of us. But one of the girls I really didn't know that well. She was like a friend of a friend, and she had taken something. I think it was like ecstasy or Molly. It's outside lands in San Francisco. It's pretty common. But she started to get really anxious. And as someone who previously had really terrible anxiety, I had anxiety attacks from like 2013 to 2018. I started to recognize the symptoms in her. And I knew that she had taken a substance. And I really didn't know how those two things were going to interact, but I knew it probably would not be good. So, a little, pause, a side note here is that at this point in my life, I was a little bit of a mess, but I was bringing it together. I was kind of at this climax point where the year prior, I had a lot of hard things happen. My boyfriend and I broke up. I got into a second relationship. That breakup happened. I was kind of feeling discontent in my role. I was doing well in my job. I was in marketing at a well-known tech company, but I just felt a little lost. I felt like I kind of wanted to shake things up. And I had been spending a lot of time learning about meditation, the power of mindfulness, different forms of mindfulness, breathing techniques, different ways to manage my anxiety, and to kind of manage this tough period that I was in. And so I was kind of coming out of this when I was at this music festival, and this girl is like on the edge of hyperventilating while like Elton John is singing in the background and there's like hundreds of people around. And, there's no way for her to quickly like find some space. So I brought her in and I was like, okay, we're going to do a breathing technique together. Just follow me. I got you. And I did this. I kind of walked her through like a guided meditation and I just did it off the cuff. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just like, we need to get in here together, girlfriend. And I did this breath where I was like, okay, imagine on the inhale, a wave is coming into your system and it's collecting anything that needs to be let go of. And then on your exhale, the wave goes out, it goes back to sea and it like carries anything with it that you need to get rid of, like any stagnant energy, any stuckness, any like scary feelings. And I like had her and I was there with her. And I think because of my presence, I was able to anchor her in and her breath calmed down. She calmed down. And I saw this incredible transformation. She went from like this frazzled energy, like a live wire, basically, to much more calm and much more regulated. And then she kind of had this smoother ride out the rest of the festival. And it was the very first time that I saw the power of my voice and how it could transform someone else's experience. And in that moment, it was like a light bulb went off. And I was like, hold up, hold the phone, pause the story. Why am I going to an office every day doing some marketing stuff for a company that is, it's cool. I like my coworkers, but like whatever. When this incredible, intense, beautiful experience just happened and I led the way for it, it was like, it's like in a movie when everything stops and becomes silent. I had that moment and I wasn't on drugs. I was just like, there's something here. This is like, it's like someone like moved a bush out of the way and a pathway became clear. And I was like, I need to move in this direction. And shortly after that, I ended up quitting my job, leaving the city of San Francisco, which I had been in for almost 10 years. So many of my good friends were there, and I just totally leapt into the unknown. I decided to travel and write, and that's when this like winding path of a journey started. But fast forward to today, I now am an entrepreneur. I have several different businesses, but mainly I'm a business coach for women. And I draw on a lot of different experiences, but kind of my parallel path, one path being like marketing and business, as well as having my own companies over time. And then the other side of the path is like all these healing modalities that I have learned and been trained in, not just to figure out my own shit, but also to help other people because I find such fulfillment in that. And that to me does not feel like work. That feels like very purpose driven, very aligned. And we'll go through a little bit of that journey and how I got to today. Some other big changes from then to now are like I was like a hot mess with relationships for probably 10 years. And now I'm very proud to say, a very healthy relationship. I just got married this year. My partner, David, you'll hear more about him in the podcast. But we have a really beautiful relationship. And yeah, I love him so much. I feel like I've gone on a journey with friendships and bringing friends close in while also saying goodbye to some. I've been on a journey with mindfulness and mindset and how powerful perspective shifts can be. And I've also become a coach in this process. When I talk about business and I talk about life, I find them very intertwined when you're an entrepreneur or when you're a leader of any kind. I find that I am someone who is very passionate. I don't settle. I, I really want to reach the full potential in many different facets of my life while balancing out perfectionism. And I think a lot of the women in this community, and if you're listening to this, some part of that probably resonates. So let's get into kind of the early career and what set the foundation for this, because where I'm at today started a long time ago. Like I can actually go back to middle school and remember when I was thinking about business ideas during the summer because I was bored. Or when my friend and I created a show of us creating pizzas from pizza Lunchables because we had nothing to do. So I always desired to like express, to do storytelling and also business, right? I think that as a woman today, we were born in this time for a reason. Like we have so many tools to create and run and grow sustainable businesses. We have tools that did not exist 10 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, think about social media. You have a marketing tool in your hand. If you were in the 90s or 80s or before, one, you maybe wouldn't have had like the right or means to create a business. Two, you would have to hire a ton of people. But now with technology, it's like we are living in a ripe world. And I think that if a woman feels a purpose or a drive to do something, fucking do it. You have all the tools at your disposal. You have the resources. And so this podcast is talking about the stuff that you cannot Google. Because you can Google how to create some different systems and ops and whatever else you need to make your purpose known to the world. I want to talk about the unknown. I want to talk about the side notes that illustrate the theories and subjects that we talk about, because those side notes are what make things feel really tangible and also make us feel like, ooh, I can do that. Okay, I can get through this. Ooh, okay, maybe now I have some clarity and know what's next or how I can get through what's next. I think our world, there's so much happening all the time. And so I want, I created this podcast because I want these conversations that I love having with really authentic people who have stepped into their confident, aligned paths and who are still learning to share a bit about their journeys and kind of these untold stories. And so, the rest of this episode is kind of the untold story of mine before I start interviewing everyone under the sun who I find is a good fit for the show. So, walking it back just a little bit. My first internship at 19 was at a major advertising industry. So immediately I was thrust into how the biggest brands in the world grow and sustain themselves. When I say one of the largest ad agencies in the world, I mean it. It was TBWA Shy Day. They did the initial Apple campaign called Think Different. And they are truly artists. Like they create art. And a lot of times when people are like, oh, marketing sucks, like what? You're in marketing, blah, 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 like shit talking. Well, yeah, marketing sucks when it's sucky marketing. But when marketing is done well, it is an art. It is beautiful. It is the feeling of opening a book and you can't wait to continue reading it. It's the feeling of waiting for a package that you've been so excited about. It's the feeling after you've used like a product or a service and you're like, oof, that really hit the spot. That is exactly what I needed. Marketing is the thing that tells that story. And so I have always been interested in marketing because of the storytelling aspect, because of that transformational purpose. So starting my career in this, I was immediately thrust into how these large brands maintain such a high quality presence and tell stories. From there, I then entered about a 10-year career in marketing. I did some different roles, which was great in hindsight because I learned different areas of that practice. I also got my bachelor's in marketing. So when it comes to marketing, I truly do feel like an expert. I worked at huge companies like FANG giants in marketing. I also worked at startups. And then on the side of this, I freelanced for nonprofits, for friends' businesses, really, taking everything that I had learned in practice, spending 40 or more hours a week on, into kind of the real world when you're an entrepreneur. I also started my own businesses on the side because this whole time I always had that like itch, right? I always had that itch after a year or two to do something of my own and create my own thing. And I did at different points. And a lot of times it failed, but not always. And the times that I created businesses that stuck or did really, really well or started growing at 10x, cadence, that's when I was like, oh my gosh, marketing theories, marketing science works. And it is this really interesting dichotomy because a lot of the foundational, fundamental marketing principles will always be true because they're based on psychology. They're based on neuroscience. They are based on decades and decades of business. And so I find it really beautiful and fascinating when I work with my clients to see how can we incorporate these principles and also stay really creative and take advantage of new tools and new formats and new methods that come out all the time, right? So over these 12 years, I really immersed myself in marketing in my day. And then by night, I was also immersing myself in many different healing modalities because I had such a personal journey over this time. An astrologer once told me that this was like my sign in Pluto, which apparently means like Pluto is like it's kind of like the Kali, like the endings and beginnings. It's like the one that's going to teach you like the hardest lessons to make you to kind of like shed all the bullshit layers to get to like your true like golden nugget core as a human. Now, of course, I do believe that all of life is that process, but apparently when your like sun sign is in Pluto, that's what's happening. Regardless, that's what it felt like over these, 10 to 12 years when I was in my marketing career was I felt like there was personal challenge after personal challenge. I, starting with those internships, they were in New York, they were in Sydney, Australia. I did my bachelor's and most of my career in San Francisco. After that music festival moment, I quit and I traveled and I did a bunch of things that I'll do another episode on later, which definitely pushed me. It pushed me to get into more like creative writing. And that's when I also was like, I don't want to just travel and write. Like, I love business. I find it fascinating to bring ideas into the world and making concrete changes in people's lives through some sort of product or service. I moved to New York after that. New York really did a number on me. It was so fun, but also it really challenges you. A city like that for someone like me, is very, very intense, intense work, intense play, and you're challenged. And I came out of that section of my life and, continuing this winding with river path, I got really into meditation to help me ground from all the chaos that New York is. My intuition opened up at that point, which is also another episode I'll go more into depth on. But I basically had all these moments of my journey. Then I moved to Denver, and basically the top of this marketing career, 10 to 12-year period for me was the moment that I also became very confident in this domain, which is crazy. Most people, when they're in some sort of domain or practice, like a couple years in, they're like, okay, wipe my hands. I got it. I understand. So it just goes to show how much I struggled with self-esteem and confidence that it took me 10 fucking years to be like, oh, I now feel like an expert in marketing. And this was a very pivotal moment in my life because I was at an agency that was at the top of its industry. So within the tech bubble, it was kind of in the cryptocurrency Web3 world. I taught blockchain at CSU Chico, as well as with a nonprofit teaching over 3,000 students in East Africa, blockchain fundamentals, DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. So like I knew my shit. And I entered this agency as a senior marketing director, and I found that I was like, oh, this is a total shit show, but I know what I'm doing. And in that role, I started coaching my clients. So CEOs of tech companies, CMOs of tech companies. And I found that I liked the coaching more than the marketing because we talked about real stuff. Of course, marketing is real too. And I love talking to entrepreneurs about, how to uplift how they're going to the masses with, what they're building. But the coaching piece felt like, something is here. And it connected with that music festival experience. It was like the second beat of a play. The first beat was helping this girl calm down. The second beat was being at this agency, burnt out, but feeling like the light in my life was when I was having these coaching moments with clients. When I was in that agency towards the tail end, I looked around and I was like, I'm burnt out and I am done working for other people. Fuck corporate. Fuck working for other people. I don't want it. That's not how I'm wired. It's never been how I've been wired. I grew up always having an entrepreneurial mindset. It's why I did really well in startups. My dad's an entrepreneur. Other people in my family are entrepreneurs. This is my path now. It was emotional. It was hard. I cried so much during that period. I decided one day, I'm done. I put in my notice. I had no idea what was next. When I told David, my partner, I was afraid what he would say because I was making a lot of money and I didn't know how that would affect us. Our rent, we're in San Diego, things are expensive. And he was so supportive. And I also knew, like, he never got on me for feeling anxious or feeling really emotional. He was always there as a steady support system. And he also like gave me space to figure it out on my own too. He didn't try to solve all my problems or, you know, control me in any way. So having his support, having him as a sounding board, I also was working with a coach and she also encouraged me like there is more to life. You do not have to suffer behind a desk. You do not have to suffer working someplace where you don't trust the people you're working for or trust that things are really in alignment with yourself. Besides what other people might say, it's all up to you. So that's when I took this really huge leap and I had no idea what was next. I wanted to just heal personally, my body. I had had like long COVID that year. I had mono that year that came out of nowhere, where like it was crazy. So I ended up creating 4 businesses within 6 months to kind of taste test different things. I was like, okay, I'm going to try this and this and this, and I'm just going to see what sticks. Of course, plans don't go as you want to plan them. So some fell off, some didn't work out, but coaching was the thing that kept coming up. It kept feeling good, it kept feeling right. I decided to become certified in it because, as someone who clearly struggles with validation and confidence, at least at this time, I wanted that validation. So I went to one of the more rigorous coaching programs, Berkeley Executive Coaching Leadership Institute. And it was hard. It was really, really hard. But I got certified. I worked with mentors. The coaching program is like you coach and you're like watched. You are watched over and analyzed and given feedback over hours and hours and hours. And you are also being coached. So you're very vulnerable. You're very raw. But I came out of that knowing like vulnerability is a power. Sharing the harder moments of life, those don't make us look weak. When we understand the beauty and power of them, they become huge catalysts for growth. They are the things that create connection. So this podcast is not only something I've always wanted, just to have really inspiring conversations and actually share them with the world instead of just having them behind, closed doors or on the sides of parties. This is truly a movement of stepping into your most authentic and confident self over and over and over again. Because while we live in a world with a ton of ripe opportunity, we also live in a world that tells us we need to look different or be different or behave differently. And I'm fucking sick of it. So I've kind of taken you through a river of different things. But since that moment that I left the agency and had 4 businesses, I now truly wake up so, so happy and honored with what I've built. I am a successful business coach for women. At any time, I'm coaching 10 to 15 women. Um, Usually they're entrepreneurs. I coach a few execs. I do coach a couple of men, but most of my marketing and everything is focused on women because it is such a specific journey to be a woman today. We have unique pressures. We have things that we're thinking about, like myself. It's like, I want to be a mother and a parent one day, right? Because being a mom and being a parent are kind of two different things. I want them both. I want to have a family with David. I also am someone who is always going to have a business and career. I'm always going to be an entrepreneur. I can't stop my brain from thinking about new ideas. I feel honored to be a part of different women's businesses. And I do marketing advisory work so that I am still in it also. I work with 2 to 3 advisory clients, meaning I'm actually in their businesses, giving recommendations, putting strategy together, working with their teams. It's similar to being like a fractional CMO, but I only take a few because it's a small part of my overall work. Because of this, I am still connected to what it's like working for a corporation, working for a team, working with a big brand, right? PayPal is one of my advisory clients. We've been working together for almost 2 years, and I've been helping them with PYUSD, their stablecoin. I also work with startups, the scrappier teams that are moving faster, have less resources. I am also working with women who are running businesses from their kitchen counters and maybe have a VA, somewhere else in the world, and they're working it. They're gaining traction, they're gaining momentum. The fact that I get to do all these things is so cool. Like if you told my middle school self who was doing the Lunchable show and trying to create businesses during the summer that, she'd be like, "Oh, hell yeah. Go girl." So I'm super proud of the life that I've created. I'm super proud of how I got here, of all the challenges, of the winding path, of all the moments of that I've been in yoga crying because I didn't know where my journey was going to go next or what to do or how I was going to make sense of all this. I'm super proud of taking the leaps when I did at different times. And yeah, I truly love what I do and all of the skills and modalities and random ass things I've explored that feed into my work and my life as a human. So some fast facts, some behind the scenes of what a day looks like in my life. I'm in my mid 30s. I'm in San Diego. David and I are actually not into routines, but we like little rituals. So like we do go on a walk with our sweet, perfect angel dog every day, June. If you follow me on social media, you will see her all the time. She's my chief vibes officer. Um, I typically work between 4 to 6 hours a day. Sometimes they're longer, sometimes they're less, but that is how I work best. I'm super fucking efficient and I don't need to work 8 hours a day. That's why I left corporate. I love yoga. I love going on walks. We live 5 blocks from the beach, which is a total privilege, and I love it. Um, both of our families are here, but ironically, we met in Colorado, even though we both grew up in San Diego. We did not know each other then. We are a Hinge love story. We met on the dating app Hinge. Um, and I have friends everywhere. I'm someone who is very good at keeping in touch long term and long distance. I have friends all over the world, and I love that. I love traveling. I love getting into uncomfortable cultures and experiences because I think they really do test us. And I love the process of evolution and introspection and looking at the self. Now, the big picture of Side Note is really there are a lot of big ideas out there that I've been frustrated with in my journey that I want to make real and make tangible. So things like when people say, oh, look at your shadow self, for example. I'm like, okay, well, what the fuck is a shadow? Can we actually like use terms that make sense? Can you give me a story of what that was like for you? That is the stuff that we're going to be talking about on Side Note. We're going to be covering so many different topics and bringing so many different people in here. So you are in for a total treat. So far, we have interviews with entrepreneurs who have had really challenging circumstances and journeys, how they've gotten through it, stories with astrologers, with authors, with creatives who have absolutely killed it, despite people saying you can't be creative and successful. So we're going to be challenging a lot of things, and we're going to be giving you new perspectives that you truly have not seen before. And I'm so excited for this journey together. So thank you for being here. My name is Sam, full name Samantha Fackler. And you can reach me at growwith_Sam on Instagram or Side Note Pod on TikTok, sidenotepod.com. So thank you so, so much for being here. See you soon.